before we move on? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And in Moodle, back to the assignment center where all the assignment materials are. Assignment 2 is here. You have an overview, you have a rubric, and then you have a feedback template, which is part of the assignment, which I'll go over. So clicking on the assignment overview, and feel free to do this if you can't see this well on my screen. You can pull it up yourselves. But I'm just going to read through it because I do think it's important that we're all on the same page. And for those that aren't in class today, they can look back on this video and get a good understanding of what is expected for assignment number 2. So, building off of your first major assignment where you identified a problem that's close to your heart, assignment 2 challenges you to start making a plan to solve it. Problem solving is at the heart of innovation and entrepreneurship. Mastering the process of problem solving requires you to listen closely, think creatively, plan meticulously, and use your relationships to mobilize others to action. Assignment number 2 asks you to practice several of these skills. So in assignment 2, you will write a concept paper, what you've been reading about this week, and then use that concept paper to share your idea with 2 people and get their feedback. You'll then analyze their feedback and write a brief synopsis of what you learned going through that process. Okay, so to get more specific, what you need to do, this assignment will take some time to complete. Strongly suggest that you start working on this paper, the concept paper, immediately. Give yourself a deadline of completing it and set up your interviews in time for you to appropriately analyze the feedback that you get. The following info will be helpful when you're completing the assignment. So the first section is 2 to 3 pages. There's not just one correct way to write an effective concept paper, which I think you probably learned with the readings of this week. However, this concept paper should be no longer than 3 pages, and it should articulate the following information at a minimum. A problem statement, so what is the problem? Make sure to provide enough context to the problem to make it easy to understand. What will happen if nothing is done to solve the problem? So we worked a lot on problems in assignment 1, and this is that natural building off point from that assignment. So in assignment 1, you were asked to write out 4 different challenges or opportunities and really hone in on one of those. So this is just a re-articulation of that problem, but getting just crystal clear, and then moving on to the idea solution, where you propose your solution and how it will actually work. Hang on, let me welcome someone else in. Okay, what barriers might get in your way? What partners will be necessary to bring your solution to life? Objectives. What are the specific objectives that are measurable that you would want to achieve? How will you know you've achieved them? And what is a general timeline for developing and implementing your solution? Okay, so this concept paper should not be written like an essay or a research paper. It should have clear headers, concise language, bullet points work well, original ideas, really showing reflection. You can use graphics, charts, images that can help articulate your ideas. For those that are kind of artistic minded, I often use PowerPoint. I'll create an image and then I'll just save it as a picture and embed it into proposals I'm creating or concept notes I'm creating. This can be particularly useful around timelines, or if your idea is kind of multi-tiered, you can sometimes use graphics as a way to articulate your idea easier than writing. And what I'm encouraging you to do is really think about the concept and what's going to be the most effective way to articulate that concept, and getting out of just let me just write and write some more. It's all about the conceptualization of this and how do you articulate it clearly. Okay? Section 2. And feel free to shout out with questions if you have them as I'm going along. So, Section 2 is feedback. After completing the concept note, identify who you are going to share your concept paper with and what feedback you hope to get from them. Make a list of at least 5 interview questions and set up a time to speak to them. Share your concept note ahead of time so they have time to read it before you speak. One interview may be with one other student at Adelphi, so you can talk to anyone in this class or someone who may be in another class, but at least one of the interviews should be someone outside of the university, but in a related field. So if you have a good relationship where you're either interning or working and you think someone might be willing to give you 30 minutes of their time to work on this assignment, that's what I'm hoping for. Okay? And it should be someone that can realistically have insights for you that would read the concept note and it makes sense to them. So let me pause there. Does that make anyone nervous? Like, does everybody feel like you have someone you could reach out to once your concept note is created? You'd feel comfortable reaching out and getting feedback from?
I'm nervous.
You're nervous about it? Tell me more.
Hello?
Yep.
I just feel like for me, for you to get somebody for attention for 30 minutes is gonna be a long time. We tried something like this last semester for one of my classes. It was extremely hard for me to get someone in my field, and even someone that's like not in my field to get their attention for 30 minutes. So people are so busy throughout the day.
Yep.
But really grab somebody's attention for 30 minutes.
Yep, for sure. No, I totally understand that. And maybe it's not a full 30 minutes, but either way, I totally understand your point. I'd be happy to talk with you about this maybe during office hours on Monday, and we can kind of brainstorm some ideas on maybe expanding the people you may think might fit, and I might even have some people you could talk to. So. Okay. And that goes for everybody as well. Okay, so section 3, analysis. After getting feedback, very briefly explain what you learned in the interview feedback process. Really what you're looking for is your concept viable? You know, did your interviewees reinforce your ideas or did they challenge your ideas? And it's totally okay if they challenge your ideas or if they didn't quite get your vision. It's all part of the process. But are there gaps in your idea that were brought to light during the interviews? And again, this section is taking the feedback and making sense of it. And again, it's not a very long exercise. It's 200 to 250 words. A strong paragraph or two will do it. But again, it's about thinking on the feedback and how is this relevant to this assignment and to the overall concept. Okay. Grading. Grading rubric we'll go through. It describes how you earn your grade. This assignment's worth 75 points or 15% of your overall grade. Feedback. This assignment has a few different steps and getting feedback along the way is encouraged. If you want to check in on your progress or have questions, office hours are the best way to reach me on Mondays. And upon completion, I will grade and provide written feedback. Due dates, November 9th at 10 a.m. So you've got a bit of time for this, and you almost got a full month. But again, I encourage you to take a stab at it sooner rather than later because it is a multi-stage process, and all of those stages are kind of built into this one assignment. Late assignments. Late assignments will not be accepted past the late date of November 16th, so 1 week after the original due date. If it is late, you'll automatically lose 10% of the points, and each assignment builds off the previous one, and so that's why it's really critically important for you to complete the work on time. And another note about that, because I'm thinking about this in terms of almost outside of an academic setting, as if this was almost a work setting, oftentimes in work settings you do have hard deadlines, and your boss may come and say, I need this on my desk November 9th at 10 a.m. because you got a phone call set up with a partner that afternoon and they want 3 hours to review it. So again, just kind of getting into that mindset. That's the due date. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Professor, I have one question.
Sure.
So for our interview, can we give you? I was two. Actually, might be two questions in one. So first one, how many questions do you think is good enough to answer in the interview?
Hmm.
How many questions do you think would be good? Like around 10? Should be a fair amount, or anything exceeding?
Yeah, so I think in the assignment it says when you write up your interview questions and the responses, you got to write at least 5 in responses to
Okay.
those questions. So I think to be on the safe side, writing somewhere between 7 and 10 questions to prepare yourself is appropriate. And
Okay.
sometimes in interviews those questions bleed into each other, and it's not
Yeah.
as smooth as like you go down the list asking questions. But I think
Okay.
in prep that should do it.
Okay. And then to build on that, can we give you a list of questions or ideas that we want to talk about before we actually have the interview? As
De-
like we can do that. We can show you first.
definitely,
All right.
definitely.
Cool. So okay. Awesome.
I would encourage you, and that's a big part of actually what you're going to be reading on and doing next week is like thinking about good questions, because those will look different depending on who you want to talk to and what information you want to get from them. So, yes, certainly share those with me. And again, I think Monday, even if it's like 5 minutes, I think the best way to get feedback is to talk. You can shoot me an email. It's not the most effective way for me to engage with you. I'll get the email, I'll look at it, and then I'll want like 5 minutes of your time so I can really explain what I'm thinking, or 10 minutes, okay?
Okay. Awesome.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to go to the rubric. This rubric looks a little bit different than the others. And again, it's 75 points. And so writing and formatting is a big part of this. It's 10 points. Concept paper part is 30 points, feedback is 20 points, and analysis is 15 points. And then what you see to the right is just broken down, and in the parentheses exactly how many points that's worth. Okay, so these are the very, very specific things I'm looking for. The formatting of the documents are consistent and logical, meaning you don't start bolding one headline and the next headline you're not bolding, but you're underlining. Those things matter when you're presenting, and you want to have consistent appearance. Headers, fonts, and bullet points are used effectively. There are no misspellings or grammatical errors, so definitely have someone proofread your paper. The concept paper, the problem statement is well written. It answers all the questions in the assignment overview. So you'll definitely want to revert back to that assignment overview when you're writing to make sure you're covering all those. The idea and solution is well laid out and written well. It answers the questions in the overview. The objectives are clearly written. They answer the specific questions in the overview. And then a realistic timeline for continued development and implementation is communicated. Again, that can be written out, that can be in kind of a graphic format, but some sort of indication of how this plays out over time. Okay, feedback. You have at least 5 questions for each interview and at least 2 bullet points for each question. The questions are well thought out and are specific to your interviewee. So these questions probably won't be the same if you're talking to another student versus someone at your internship. The bullet points use complete sentences and capture an entire idea, meaning I fully understand the points being made. And this is something I've noticed in the personal wikis as well as the first assignment. I think maybe some people are confusing my desire for concise language for incomplete language. So we want to continue to use complete sentences so you're not assuming I know anything going into it. So I read it and I can understand it. It totally makes sense to me. Okay? And then the last part of that is the analysis is well thought out and well written. So you don't just regurgitate back what others have said in your interviews, but you really make sense of those and put thought into what that means from your perspective. Okay? Last point, analysis. You've considered the feedback critically and come to clear conclusions about what the feedback means. You have answered the question and assignment overview clearly. And this line here, I think I meant to put it on the line below. So I'll go in and adjust this to the points so it makes more sense. But you, I think, get the general idea of what I'm going for here. Okay? Anybody have any questions on this? All right. Last thing I'll show you is the feedback template. So this is consistent. I want everybody to actually use this template. And what you will actually submit to me is two things. One is the concept note or the concept paper, and I use those two interchangeably, paper and note. And that you will create in just a Microsoft Word document. And then this concept paper feedback. So this is where you'll put the name of the person you're interviewing, the title, the organization, and the date and time of the interview. In these, which I'm highlighting yellow here, all your questions, these will actually be your questions. These shouldn't say, what is your first question? These should actually write out what you're asking. Okay. And then underneath those, this is how you're going to summarize the feedback you get. So we want you to capture your interviewees' responses in bullet point format, capturing their most important insights, being concise enough to make it easy to read and understand, but provide enough context so it makes complete sense. Okay, so each bullet point can be anywhere from 2 to 4 complete sentences. So again, these aren't long explanations and thoughts about the questions. It's short, punchy, to the point. What are the main takeaways you got? What was the main point your person was trying to get across to you when you were doing the interview? Okay, and so this just goes down, has the second interview. Again, you'll just replace these with your actual questions. You'll replace these with your actual responses. And then the analysis part, this is the same language that's on the assignment overview. Okay, so I won't read it again, but this is your chance here to just use this template and just write in here 200 and 250 words of what you learned. Okay, questions? All right.